Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Brendan tossed and turned in his bed. Tomorrow marked his 25th birthday, a milestone he'd been dreading for months. Sleep eluded him, his mind racing with thoughts of what could have been, what should have been. He'd always felt different, out of place in his own skin, as if the body he inhabited wasn't truly his own. As the clock struck midnight, a soft glow filled the room. Brendan sat up, rubbing his eyes in disbelief. Before him stood a figure of ethereal beauty, wings of light unfurling behind its back. "Who? What are you?" Brendan whispered, his voice barely audible. The figure smiled, a warmth radiating from its presence. "I am an angel, Brendan. I've come to offer you a choice." Brendan's heart raced. He'd never believed in angels, yet here one stood before him, impossibly real. "A choice?" he echoed, his mind struggling to comprehend the situation. The angel nodded, its voice melodious and soothing. "You've carried a burden for so long, Brendan. I'm here to give you an opportunity to change your path." Brendan swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. "What do you mean?" "I can offer you 2 paths," the angel explained. "The first, to live as the woman you've always felt you were meant to be. Your life will be fulfilling, filled with love and purpose. But it will be short. You'll have only 20 years. Brendan's breath caught in his throat. 20 years as his true self? It sounded like a dream. "And the second option?" he asked, his voice trembling. "You can remain as you are. Your life will be long. You'll see your 80th birthday, but it will be unremarkable. You'll live, but you won't truly thrive." The weight of the decision pressed down on Brendan. He closed his eyes, his mind whirling with possibilities. To be himself, herself, for 20 vibrant years, or to live a long life always feeling out of place. I choose to stay as I am," Brendan said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "A long life. Maybe I can find happiness this way." The angel's expression was unreadable. "Very well, Brendan. Your choice is made." With a flash of light, the angel vanished, leaving Brendan alone in the darkness of his room. He lay back down, his mind racing with thoughts of what could have been and what was yet to come. Years passed, each one blending into the next. Brendan lived his life as best he could, trying to find contentment in the ordinary. He pursued a career in accounting, finding solace in the predictability of numbers. Weekends were spent watching sports with acquaintances he hesitated to call friends, always feeling like an outsider looking in. On his 40th birthday, Brendan sat alone in his apartment, a half-eaten cake on the table before him. He stared at the candles, their flames dancing in the dim light. The weight of his decision all those years ago pressed down on him, heavier than ever. Was this the right choice? He murmured to himself, watching as a drop of wax rolled down the side of a candle. He thought of the life he could have had, short but authentic. The what-ifs plagued him, creeping into his thoughts in quiet moments. As he blew out the candles, Brendan made a silent wish, not for happiness, but for understanding. Understanding of himself, of his place in the world, of the path he'd chosen. The years continued to roll by. Brendan married, a union more of convenience than passion. His wife, Linda, was kind but distant, sensing the wall Brendan had built around himself. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, whom Brendan loved fiercely but always felt a disconnect from. On his 60th birthday, surrounded by his family, Brendan forced a smile as he opened gifts and cut the cake. His daughter, now a teenager, hugged him tightly. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. Brendan's heart clenched. He loved her, too, more than she could ever know. But a part of him wondered what kind of parent he could have been if he'd made a different choice all those years ago. As the party wound down and the last guests left, Brendan found himself alone on the back porch, staring up at the stars. The weight of his decision, the life unlived, sat heavy on his shoulders. "You okay, honey?" Linda's voice broke through his reverie. Brendan turned, offering a weak smile. Just thinking. Linda nodded, understanding in her eyes. She'd always known there was something Brendan held back, a part of himself he kept locked away. You know you can talk to me, right? About anything. For a moment, Brendan considered telling her everything. The angel, the choice, the constant feeling of being out of place in his own skin. But the words caught in his throat. I know, he said instead. Thank you. Linda squeezed his hand and went back inside, leaving Brendan alone with his thoughts once more. The years continued to pass, each one a reminder of the choice he'd made. Brendan watched his children grow up, graduate college, start families of their own. He was there for the birth of his grandchildren, holding them in his arms and marveling at their tiny fingers and toes. On the eve of his 79th birthday, Brendan sat in his favorite armchair, a photo album open on his lap. He traced a finger over a picture of himself as a young man, taken just days after his fateful 25th birthday. The eyes that stared back at him were filled with uncertainty, a hint of regret already visible. Was it worth it? He asked the empty room, his voice cracking with age and emotion. As if, in answer, a soft glow filled the room, the same ethereal light he'd seen all those years ago. Brendan's breath caught in his throat as the angel materialized before him, unchanged by the passage of time. You, Brendan whispered, tears welling in his eyes. The angel smiled, a hint of sadness in its expression. Hello, Brendan. It's been a long time. Brendan nodded, unable to speak. The weight of decades of unspoken words pressed against his chest. You've lived the life you chose, the angel said softly. Was it what you hoped for? Brendan looked down at the photo album, at the life captured in its pages. I don't know, he admitted. I've had a good life. I have a family, grandchildren. But, the angel prompted gently. But I've always felt like I was playing a role, Brendan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Like I was watching someone else live my life. I've never felt whole. The angel nodded, understanding in its eyes. And if you could go back, make the choice again? Brendan closed his eyes, imagining the life he could have had. 20 years as his true self. A short life, but an authentic one. I don't know, he said finally. I love my family, my grandchildren. I wouldn't want to give them up, but you wonder what could have been, the angel finished for him. Brendan nodded, a tear rolling down his cheek. Was there a right choice? Did I make a mistake? The angel's expression softened. There was no right or wrong choice, Brendan. Only different paths, each with its own joys and sorrows. Will I ever know peace? Brendan asked, his voice trembling. The angel reached out, its touch warm and comforting. That, Brendan, is up to you. It's never too late to embrace your truth, to live authentically. The choice is still yours. As the angel faded away, Brendan was left alone with his thoughts once more. He looked down at the photo album, at the life he'd lived, and wondered about the life he hadn't. As sleep began to overtake him, he made a silent promise to himself, to spend whatever time he had left being true to who he really was. But what if Brendan had made a different choice that night? What if he had chosen the shorter, more authentic life? In another reality, Brendan took a deep breath and looked the angel in the eye. I choose to live as who I truly am, he said, his voice stronger than he expected, even if it means only 20 years. The angel smiled, a warmth radiating from its presence. So be it, Brendan. Your new life begins now. With a flash of light, everything changed. Brendan felt a tingling sensation throughout his body, a warmth spreading from his core to the tips of his fingers and toes. When he opened his eyes, he gasped. The reflection in the mirror showed a young woman with long auburn hair and bright green eyes. This is me, she whispered, touching her face in wonder. This is who I've always been. As the sun rose on her 25th birthday, Brendan, now Evelyn, stepped out into the world for the first time as her true self. The air felt fresher, colors seemed brighter, and for the first time in her life, she felt at peace in her own skin. The next few months were a whirlwind of change and discovery. Evelyn came out to her friends and family, facing a mix of reactions. Some embraced her with open arms, while others struggled to understand. Her parents, initially shocked, came around with time, their love for their child ultimately outweighing their confusion. Evelyn threw herself into her new life with enthusiasm. She quit her unfulfilling job in finance and pursued her passion for art, enrolling in classes at the local community college. Her paintings, filled with vibrant colors and raw emotion, quickly gained attention in the local art scene. It was at her first gallery showing that Evelyn met Michael. He was tall, with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. As he studied one of her paintings, Evelyn felt drawn to him. "What do you think?" she asked, approaching him. Michael turned, his eyes lighting up. "It's incredible, the way you've captured light and shadow. It's like looking into someone's soul." They talked for hours that night about art, life, and dreams. By the end of the evening, Evelyn knew she'd found something special. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Michael was patient and understanding, supporting Evelyn through the challenges of her transition and celebrating her victories. On their 1-year anniversary, as they walked hand in hand along the beach, Michael got down on one knee. "Evelyn," he said, his voice full of emotion, "you've brought so much light and joy into my life. Will you marry me?" Tears streaming down her face, Evelyn nodded. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding was a small but joyous affair. Evelyn wore a flowing white gown, feeling more beautiful and more herself than she ever had before. As she and Michael exchanged vows, she caught sight of the proud tears in her parents' eyes. Life continued to unfold in beautiful and unexpected ways. Evelyn's art career took off, her paintings hanging in galleries across the country. She and Michael adopted 2 children, a brother and sister who filled their home with laughter and love. But as her 40th birthday approached, Evelyn began to feel a sense of urgency. She knew her time was limited, and she was determined to make every moment count. She threw herself into community work, volunteering at shelters and speaking at schools about acceptance and being true to oneself. Her warmth and authenticity touched countless lives, inspiring others to embrace their own truths. At 42, Evelyn noticed a lump in her breast. The diagnosis came back: aggressive breast cancer. As she sat in the doctor's office, holding Michael's hand tightly, she thought back to the angel's words, a fulfilling but short life. "We'll fight this," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll try every treatment, every option." Evelyn smiled, touching his face gently. "We will," she agreed. "But if it's my time, I want you to know that these years have been the happiest of my life. I wouldn't change a thing." The next 3 years were a battle. Evelyn faced chemotherapy, radiation, and multiple surgeries with courage and grace. Even on her worst days, she found moments of joy in the love of her family, in the beauty of a sunset, in the act of creating art. As her 45th birthday approached, Evelyn knew her time was growing short. She gathered her family around her, Michael, their children, her parents, and closest friends. "I want you all to know," she said, her voice weak but filled with love, "that I've lived more in these 20 years than most people do in a lifetime. I've loved deeply, created passionately, and lived authentically. Don't mourn for me. Celebrate the life we've shared." In her final days, Evelyn finished one last painting, a self-portrait that captured not just her physical appearance, but the essence of who she was. It showed a woman radiating joy and peace, surrounded by swirls of vibrant color. On the morning of her 45th birthday, Evelyn slipped away peacefully in her sleep, Michael holding her hand. As news of her passing spread, an outpouring of love and grief swept through the community she'd touched. At her memorial service, the church was packed with people whose lives Evelyn had impacted. Her art adorned the walls, a testament to the beauty she'd brought into the world. Michael stood at the podium, their children by his side, and spoke of the incredible woman he'd been blessed to love. "Evelyn lived every day to the fullest," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "She taught us all to be true to ourselves, to love without reservation, and to find beauty in every moment. Her life may have been short in years, but it was immeasurably rich in impact and meaning." As the service ended, people lingered, sharing stories of how Evelyn had touched their lives. A young trans woman spoke of how Evelyn's courage had given her the strength to come out. An elderly man recalled how Evelyn's kindness had helped him through the loss of his wife. A fellow artist spoke of Evelyn's generosity in mentoring young talents. In the years that followed, Evelyn's legacy lived on. Her art continued to inspire, hanging in galleries and homes around the world. The community center where she'd volunteered established a scholarship in her name, helping young artists pursue their dreams. Michael never remarried, carrying Evelyn's love with him always. He raised their children with stories of their mother's courage and kindness, ensuring that her spirit lived on in them. On what would have been Evelyn's 50th birthday, Michael sat in their old studio, surrounded by her paintings. He picked up a small framed photo, a selfie Evelyn had taken on her 25th birthday, the day she began living as her true self. Her eyes shone with joy and hope, a radiant smile on her face. "You were right, my love," Michael whispered, tracing her face in the photo. "It's not about the number of years. It's about how fully we live them." As he set the photo down, a warm breeze drifted through the open window, carrying with it the scent of lilacs, Evelyn's favorite flower. For a moment, Michael could almost feel her presence, as vibrant and loving as ever. In that moment, any doubt about Evelyn's choice vanished. She had lived her truth, loved deeply, and left an indelible mark on the world. Her life, though short, had been a masterpiece, just like her art. As the sun set on another day, casting a golden glow over Evelyn's paintings, Michael smiled. He knew that somewhere, somehow, Evelyn was at peace, her spirit as free and beautiful as it had always been. The story of Evelyn's life continued to inspire long after she was gone. Books were written about her journey, documentaries made about her art and activism. Young people struggling with their identity found hope in her story, drawing strength from her courage to live authentically. In the art world, Evelyn's work only grew in recognition and value. Museums hosted retrospectives of her paintings. Critics analyzed the depth and emotion captured in each brushstroke. But it was the personal stories that truly kept her memory alive. Tales of kindness, of inspiration, of a life lived with purpose and joy. On what would have been Evelyn's 60th birthday, a major art gallery in New York hosted a special exhibition of her work. Michael, now in his 70s, attended with their children and grandchildren. As he walked through the rooms filled with Evelyn's art, he was struck anew by the vibrancy and life that poured from each canvas. One painting, in particular, caught his eye, a piece he'd never seen before. It showed a figure standing at a crossroads, surrounded by swirling colors of possibility. In the corner, almost hidden, was a tiny angel. "Dad," his daughter said, coming to stand beside him. "I don't remember this one." Michael smiled, a bittersweet ache in his chest. "I don't either. It must have been one of her last works." As they stood there, a young woman approached them, her eyes wide with emotion. "Excuse me," she said hesitantly. "Are you Evelyn's family?" Michael nodded, smiling warmly. "We are. I'm her husband, Michael." The woman's eyes filled with tears. I just wanted to thank you, and her. Evelyn's story. It saved my life. I was in a dark place, afraid to be who I really was, but learning about her, seeing her art, it gave me the courage to be true to myself." Michael reached out, squeezing the young woman's hand. "Thank you for sharing that. Evelyn would have been so happy to know she's still helping people." As the young woman walked away, Michael turned back to the painting. He could almost hear Evelyn's voice, see her smile. "You're still changing lives, my love," he whispered. Thanks for watching. Check out Patreon if you want to have early access to the other parts. If not, it will be online in a couple of days.